20th of March 2003, corresponding to 17th of the Muharram of 1422 Hijri. The criminal, Junior Bush, committed, he and his aides, his crime that he was threatening Iraq with, and humanity as well. His criminal act comes from and the act of those who helped him and his followers. This is added to the series of their shameful crimes against Iraq and the humanity. This is a start for other additional crimes.
More crimes. O Iraqi people, or those who are supporting us, glory to you and to our state. We are all for jihad and those who are supporting. And then, I don't want to repeat what is to be done. As for all the glorious people and what is to be done to defend the dear country and principles and the holy places. And I should tell for everyone, I would say, for each one of us in the family of Iraq, all the believers and all those who are suffering from the injustice, that they have to remember what has been said. And these days are in the hands of God. They will add to your glory, glorious nation, what is due to you, and the believers before God are victorious, and all the enemies of God are going to be defeated. You will be victorious, O Iraqi people. With you, the sons of the nation. But you are victorious with the help of God. And the enemies are in disgrace. The sword. Take the sword without any fear. Take out the sword. Let them be witness to that. Take out the sword. The enemy is against you. Only the reasonable will be victorious. And let there is the hope. Let all the storms be blow, and and be glorious before all the unjust people. And raise your head before the and defeat while the fire is ablaze. Take out the sword and break them down. Only the resolute people will be victorious in every way, and call upon God, and that the wound will be healed. My friends, and those who are fighting evil in the world, peace be upon you. You have seen how Bush is acting against you and your opinions, against the war. Your call for peace. And he's committing a disgraceful crime today. I am with you in the name of the leadership and the people of Iraq who is fighting, and the heroic army, the nation of civilization and faith, that we will conquer the invaders, and we will win with God. What are they planning? And they are driven by Zionists and all the unjust people, and they will be defeated. A great defeat that is given to the evil people and all those who love humanity. And I'm saying, and those people who love peace. Iraq will be victorious. And with Iraq, our nation and humanity will be victorious. And evil will be driven away, so it cannot defend its own crimes with all the alliance that's been the deviant alliance of the Zionists and the Americans against our Arabic nation. God is great. God is great. And in the introduction, our nation, a glorious nation. God is great. God is great. And long live Iraq and Palestine. God is great. God is great. Long live our glorious nation. And let the humane brotherhood live long, and peace and security and the right of people for freedom and justice. God be great, and let the enemies be disgraced. And long live Iraq. Long live Iraq. Long live jihad, and long live Palestine.
And that reported by Iraqi administration to be the Iraqi leader Saddam Hussein, reported to be a live broadcast. If you listen closely to that speech, you may notice, as we did, that there was nothing to indicate that this was recorded after the initial strikes. There was no reference to anything specific that has already happened, no reference to anything of which we already have direct knowledge, no indication of any kind that this might have been something live from Saddam Hussein. Though you may have been able to see that this appeared to be a handwritten speech of sorts, it had no particulars. And aside from that, there is nothing to confirm, as Fox reports at this hour, that that was in fact Saddam Hussein. Many of those within our producer ranks who watch Saddam Hussein's tapes over time and watch his speech patterns and all the rest, and his body shape and the rest, might suggest that his shoulders were a little thin there, and his face was a little different, and all the rest. But that's all for speculation, and the long and short of it is, we can't confirm that that was Saddam Hussein. We can't confirm that it was live. We cannot even confirm that it was new. But we can tell you it's what was just broadcast at 18 minutes before the hour of 9 o'clock in the morning on Iraqi television to the Iraqi nation. Brett Baer live with us from the Pentagon. Brett?
Shep, I just talked to a U.S. official who was, of course, watching that as it came down, watching it very closely, saying it is being analyzed throughout the intelligence community. I will just make a personal observation. As we were watching that, if you looked at the broadcast toward the end, you saw what it looked to me like a crinkle in the tape. And, of course, we see that in broadcasting every once in a while. You see a tape that kind of jets around ground and has essentially little lines that go down, and that indicates a tape broadcast. That's my personal observation, and I can tell you that U.S. officials and the intelligence community is looking at that
than we have seen him look recently. He portrays himself on Iraqi television as looking very relaxed. Very interesting there, Aaron. Of course, the theme that all of this is driven by Zionism, is driven by the United States' aggression to gain control over the region. We hear that time and time again from Iraqi officials. Very interesting here to get a hint, the first hint perhaps, of how Iraq thinks it will deal with this war, saying that we will drive them to the limit, drive the invading forces to the limit where they lose their patience and they will lose their hope. And the day will come where they are driven down to their lowest level and give up. This is the first time we've heard an Iraqi official articulate how they plan to try and win. They plan to try and do it here by making sure that the United States loses its patience, that the troops lose their hope, that their morale is driven to its lowest level. This is something that we haven't heard before. Very interesting, a call to arms to draw your swords, to draw your guns, clearly calling on the Iraqi people at this very, very critical time for them to stand with the government, to stand behind the leadership. Of course, difficult to analyze as well exactly what people really are feeling in their hearts of hearts as they stand, as they know, on the brink of a very, very serious war at this time, Aaron.
It is, to use a colloquialism, it is the knock on the Americans, I suppose, that, and this is a product of Vietnam, that the country does not have the staying power in moments like this, that it does not have the will to take casualties, that it does not have the will to expend the lives, I almost said human resources, does not have the willingness to accept the casualties of war. That has been the knock on the country in the post-Vietnam era. We would just refer again to something that President Bush said when he talked. He made it very clear that this may go on a long time, but I think the term was no half measures here, no half victories here, that in the President's view, the President of the United States' view, the United States is in it to the end, and there, in our view, there could be little question that that is indeed the American feeling tonight, that they will do what it takes as quickly as possible, but they will do what it takes to do the job the President has enunciated over now many, 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 many months. Wolf, this question of whether it was Saddam and the doubles, I don't mean to use the term paranoid in the classic psychiatric sense. We'll use it in the idiomatic sense. He is a man obsessed with security.
He certainly is a man obsessed with security. And let me make a couple points about what we've just seen unfold on Iraqi television before coming out here to Kuwait. Over the past several months, I've had several high-level briefings with U.S. and other intelligence sources, and they point out about the whole issue of Saddam Hussein having body doubles. Usually that's when he's out in public. They have someone who looks like him, dresses like him, can walk in a crowd and almost pretend to be him, but you never hear that other person speak. Saddam Hussein has a very distinctive voice in Arabic, and anyone who's an Arabic speaker could certainly make out if, in fact, that was or was not Saddam Hussein, given the very recognized voice that he has. In this particular case, he spoke. You saw him reading from his notes, so clearly anyone who knows Saddam Hussein's voice would be well aware of that this was in fact Saddam Hussein. The other point you have to notice, at the top of his speech, he referred to the date now in this part of the world, 20 March 2003. That indicates that this was not a previously recorded videotape. This was a tape recording that was done since the U.S. strike began. Those cruise missiles, F-117As, launched that attack on those selected targets in Baghdad. The Iraqi leader also was very, very precise in terms of going after the President of the United States. At one point, he called him the criminal Junior Bush. The criminal Junior Bush, a very derogatory term as far as the Arab world is concerned, meaning that he's just a junior as far as his father was concerned, and there's this long-standing, of course, animosity, hatred between the Bush family, of course, and the Saddam Hussein family, if you will. So it was getting very personal there as well. Let's bring Christian Amanpour. As you assess this situation, Christian, you see Saddam Hussein emerging on Iraqi television literally only very briefly after the U.S. clearly sought to decapitate the Iraqi leadership. It reminded me of what happened earlier in the day when there were rumors that Tariq Aziz, the deputy prime minister of Iraq, had fled or had been killed, and he emerged on television right away. It underscores how sophisticated the Iraqi regime is.
Well, yeah, and Nick Robertson was talking about that as well. I mean, it underscores that they understand the capacity of the airwaves, and they need to show what they want to show quite quickly. But I think in terms of what he said about Americans losing patience and perhaps underestimating America's staying power, I think what many people in the world forget is that that equation changed in the United States after September 11th. That's the one major change, I think, in terms of the American people's willingness to take casualties and the politicians' willingness to commit forces. Because now, after so many Americans were killed on September 11th, and so many police and firefighters were killed doing their job, there is no question any longer that the soldiers who are paid to do the job of fighting and sometimes dying will have to do it as well. So I think it's no longer appropriate for people around the world to question whether the United States forces and the United States public will have weak stomachs for this kind of battle. Certainly we don't know what's going to happen in the long run, but for the moment I think that the public opinion in the United States shows that this is not in question and that the American people will support their troops as long as they get the job done. In terms of his constant repeating and referring to the American Zionist plan, this is one of the main reasons why there has been so essentially little support in the Arab world for a war in Iraq. The fact that the United States has allowed and not intervened in the Arab-Israeli crisis over the last couple of years, and that this is going on unabated, certainly does not provide the ideal context in this part of the world for an attack on Iraq. And certainly speaking to many Arab leaders over the last few weeks and months, many of them said that had there been an attempt to put out the flames between the Palestinians and the Israelis, many of the Arab leaders would have been much more forthright and overt about their support for the disarmament of Saddam Hussein. So I think that's something that he knows goes down well in this region. Aaron?
Christian, thanks. I think many in the Arab world would in fact say that this President Bush, President George W. Bush, has been less even-handed. They would say that. We're not saying that. They would say that than was President Clinton in his dealing with the Israeli dispute, and that has certainly, as Christian indicated, caused Arab leaders and people in Arab capitals and believers in the Palestinian cause great concern. Nick Robertson in Baghdad.